Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to filmmaker Gene Dolders. Gene started in the corporate space and then decided he wanted to move into feature films. So he directed 2 short films to get him prepped, then went to work on his feature film, The Blade Cuts Deeper. It's inspired by Italian Giallo horror movies, and it was shot for £14,000 over 14 days. I talked to Gene about how he financed the film. We talked about the challenges of shooting something over 14 days, how much fun he had making the movie, and we also talked about his sales and distribution plans and hopes for the future. Enjoy. So talk me through how you got into filmmaking.
Well, my first job was working for a video production company in Southport, which is in the northwest of England, not far from where I live now. And that was for corporate. It was all corporate stuff. Actually, mainly it was focus groups for car manufacturers. So I did a lot of work for Ford, Mitsubishi, and Range Rover. And essentially, what would happen is they would have about 8 to 10 members of the public would come in, and then they'd have like a mediator, like a guy doing the talk, and they would sit in a kind of a V shape, so 5 or 4 on each side. He'd sit in the middle at the end of the table, and then there'd be a room at the back where there'd be cars that they're thinking of bringing out within the next 10 to 15 years, and then we'd film the people looking around the cars, and then they come back into the room and we film the feedback. So, very simple stuff, but that was my introduction into production essentially, because I was a camera op. That's where I learned to be a camera operator, and I also learned live editing then, because sometimes I used to go on the edits suite. And then this is in 2000 to 2006, so this is before a lot of wireless stuff. So these had like massive, what were they called? RCUs, radio control unit cables. So these thick cables like this, thick, running from every camera. These big units for editing, and that's how I started. Nothing sexy, but it got me in.
That's all right. And did you ever get any weird reactions to cars from people? Or is it docu-style, you just sort of following them around?
Yeah, so that when they were walking around the cars, it was all handheld, which was actually very good, because it teaches you a lot, especially how to hold the camera steady for quite a lot. Because sometimes we'd have to do handheld for 30 to 40 minutes, which has come in handy now because I'm a cinematographer now. So and I like to operate my own camera. So when I'm doing handheld stuff for periods of time, I can really kind of call back to the styles that I used to use when I was doing that stuff. I mean, it's not so bad now actually, because the cameras are smaller. But yeah, sorry, no, it was kind of docu-style when you're walking around the cars, but when you got into the room for them to do the feedback, it was all the cameras were locked off. You'd have 3 cameras, 1 camera at the back of the room that would do a master essentially, and then 2 cameras either side that would go in for profiles on all the individual people, and you just cut back and forth between them and the person mediating the whole thing.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that serious and that they kept that kind of information, the car manufacturers.
Oh, it's mad. I mean, the amount of money they spent at that point. They Once they find a vendor, like a production company that they like, Ford. I mean, they kept with them because they knew that we knew their style. So they flew me out to Dubai, to the States, all over the world to do all these focus groups with different people.
That's an interesting point, actually, and I've experienced this as well, is that big companies, even medium companies, if they find, like you say, someone they trust who spits out whatever it is they're after, they'll just stick with them, like partly because it's quality and it's good, but there's a little element of there's no ball ache involved from their point of view, so they just go, oh, we'll just book them again, we'll just keep booking them. So if you can get in with a place like that, you're laughing.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, definitely. And that carries out over to all the jobs I do now as well. I mean, when you're on set, if you're reliable and you obviously, you can do what you can do and you're just a nice person, people just bring you back all the time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So then, what? How did we get from? So I know you do a lot of sort of corporate sector stuff. How did you get from that to directing a horror feature film?
So, yeah, so 2006, I stopped working for that company and I decided to go off to Asia. And I was only meant to go there for a year. I just wanted to go and experience Asia because I'm a I'm a massive fan of Hong Kong cinema. So I just wanted to go over there and just live there. So I thought I'll get a job as an English teacher just so I can go and live there. And then met someone, and then 1 year turned into 10 years living over there. I didn't get back to England until 2016. So I kept teaching English whilst I was over there, and then started doing freelance camera work, and then got into more post-production stuff because I had been a video editor in England before then, and started learning how to do just things like After Effects, like comp work and stuff like that. So ended up picking up freelance work over there as a camera operator sometimes, and as doing like some post-production work in After Effects for some companies, but also teaching as well on the side to get some more money keep coming through. And yeah, so that got me more actually into narrative stuff, because as I was over there, people were doing more narrative stuff over there than they were doing kind of corporate stuff. It seemed like corporate was a bigger thing over more in Europe, whereas in Asia there was a lot of corporate work going on, but they seemed to be more into narrative work. So I started just kind of straying into more narrative stuff there. And I'd always wanted to direct. I'd always wanted to make a movie since I was a teenager. I've been a film fan for pretty much most of my life. I think a lot of filmmakers are. They kind of grow up watching movies, and they just, they have this dream of making a movie. And I've dreamt of making a film since I was in my early teens. Funnily enough, always wanted to be a cinematographer, and I did want to make movies myself. But I just like the idea of setting up shots and lighting and all that stuff. It really interests me. And then I came back in 2016, and I didn't know anyone anymore because I'd been away for 10 years from the UK. So I thought I'm just going to get slowly back into it again here. So I directed a couple of short films that I really used as testers. I mean, both of them did play in some film festivals domestically and internationally, but it was never really my intention for those films to be, like my calling card. I was using them as tests to see if I'd make a feature film, what mistakes can I make now before before I go and make a feature film. So the first short I did taught me how to really schedule a shoot. Really, that's all it really taught me. But that's a very big thing, obviously. And the second short I did taught me how to work with prosthetics and makeup artists. Allowing how much time you need to allow them on set and things like that. So then when I came to make my feature, that those two main things came into play. But essentially, I just came back from Asia in 2016 and thought, I really want to make a movie now. I've always wanted to make a movie. I'm going to make a movie. I'll instead of going to film school, because I never went to film school, I'll just make a couple of short films myself. And then, because I was previously a camera operator, I started working on other people's short films for free at the beginning, just to get some more experience and get back into the swing of things again. Then I started getting some work as a cinematographer in short films, and got a job on a feature film as a cinematographer, and just started getting more experience on set and getting back into the swing of things again. And I thought, oh, you know what? I've made a couple of short films now. There's no real money to be made in short films. I mean, I guess you can, but there's not really. And not that I didn't make this feature film that I've made now to make money, because it's quite niche, really. The feature film. I just made it because I really wanted to make a feature film. I really wanted to make this kind of
That's
style.
all right. So we've gone off abroad 10 years, come back, and I guess the interesting thing about that is like a lot of people, students or new filmmakers, that's essentially what you were. You're someone who's got the skills but not the contacts to make stuff happen. So you've made these short films to kind of get back into it and gone, right, I'm going to do a feature film. And you've shot a feature film called The Blade Cuts Deeper. So give me the pitch for it. Tell me what it's about.
Okay, so I'm calling it a Giallo or Giallo inspired slasher, because there are many tropes that you normally associate with a Giallo. The main one being the kind of investigatory aspect of the story, where they're trying to find out who the killer is, and usually the police are involved. The police are never really the main characters, but they are involved in some way, because the main character is usually the person trying to solve the murder, because they're probably going to get framed for it. Now, my movie's only set over 4 or 5 hours in one night, so we didn't have time to introduce an investigatory aspect to it, and also it would have increased the budget obviously as well. So we're trying to keep the budget as small as possible. So that's why I call it a Giallo inspired slasher, because really it's story wise it's kind of leaning more towards slasher, but stylistically, because I'm a cinematographer, I've shot it more like a Giallo with the shots, and then we've got the kind of classic um, leather gloved killer, all that kind of stuff that you would see in a Giallo movie, which I love, because I'm a big fan. I mostly watch Italian movies, especially from the 70s and 80s. Big Dario Argento fan, big Sergio Martino fan, and visually, I've based my movie on The Bird with the Crystal Plumage by Dario Argento, and another movie called Torso by Sergio Martino. But to answer your question, sorry, and I'm going to get there. is the I know. I'm giving context. Sorry, I'm giving context. So the movie is about a production company called Crash Studios, and they have a true crime TV show that we created within the world of the movie, which is called Lights, Camera, Kill. And like every true crime TV show, they have reenactment sections of the crimes that they're covering. So one particular reenactment that they cover, um, they're known for their kind of lurid reenactments that they do. They're not exactly nice to the victims. They just want to get viewerships for their TV show. So one of the reenactments that they do on one of their shows makes a family member of a victim very angry, and that family member decides to start picking off all the production cast and crew one by one.
Nice. I'm sure that happens on productions. On productions.
Well, what from my experience, it'd be more the crew members picking off the director and the producers one by one.
Yeah. That's probably the first person to go would be the director. So just to circle back, because I was going to ask you about that. So you answered a couple of questions there for me, which is good. Just so that people who don't know and haven't watched it, Giallo is Italian horror from what is it, 60s, 70s?
Well, the heyday was really kind of the early to mid 70s. People say that Dario Argento really kicked it off, but he kicked it off internationally with the Bird with the Crystal Plumage, which I think was like 69, 70. But I'd say it's from the late 60s to the mid, possibly late 70s is the heyday of it. And for those who
Mm.
don't know, Giallo means yellow in Italian. And there used to be all these books long before the movies were made, these like true crime novels, and they would always have a yellow background to them with a picture of like the killer or something over the yellow background. So once these movies started becoming popular, started getting made, kind of based around the idea of these books, they called the subgenre
Mm.
Giallo.
Yeah. And the thing about them is to say is if you watched it expecting a normal film, you might find them quite shonky and sort of a bit melodramatic maybe. But once you get into them, they have got their own sort of style and heartbeat, and you can also see the influence of them in a lot of bigger films here and there with shots and stuff like that for sure.
Oh yeah, you can see. I mean, you can see a lot of Mario Bava's early work in a lot of big films now, and Dario Argento. And yeah, you're right, the melodrama. I mean, especially Argento, his stuff was a lot of it didn't make sense. I mean, why is this happening? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't matter. It's like he called it they're basically his nightmares on screen. So he could do pretty much whatever he wanted to. Some giallos were a little bit more made a little bit more sense. Mine has quite an understandable story, but there are bits that kind of stray a little bit. Just stupid things like, well, why did they leave that door open? Or, why did they do this? Or why is there suddenly a 2-minute chase scene through this construction site? I don't know, but it's a giallo. That's just how it works.
That's a good one. That is a good excuse. I like it. I like it. So then, let's talking about the film that you made. How did you fund the film?
Right. So the film was hard. I think I would say, I mean, I'll roughly say 50% of the budget came from me because realistically, as a new filmmaker as well, or not a non-name filmmaker, if you want to call it that, people generally aren't going to give you any money unless you have some. I mean, I see some kind of first-time filmmakers, if you want to call them that, on YouTube, but they've already got thousands upon thousands of followers, so they can call upon those followers, to maybe crowdfund. But because I didn't have any followers, or I don't have a big social media following, I knew that it was going to have to be self-funded realistically. So I think about 50% of the budget probably comes from me, and then the rest of it came from friends. And I think one of the family member gave me a little bit of money, but most of them were friends. So I think there was including me and three other people funded the film. So there's four of us altogether that funded it. And the budget is only small. I'll tell you the budget if you're interested, how much it was. So the movie was shot in 12 days, with 2 days of pickups, so 14 days of photography really altogether, and it was shot for £14,000. So you could average it out at
Hmm.
about £1,000 a day.
Okay, it's reasonable. It's reasonable. And how do you save money? What's your tip? If I'm making my first feature film, horror film, how am I going to make it cheaply but still make it look good?
Well, I guess I can tell you how I did it because I had by the time I came to make my first feature film, I had a regular crew. So I'd already shot two short films, but what I hadn't mentioned before is that I was doing I had gone back to do some corporate work again because obviously, I need to pay my mortgage and all those stupid things. So I was doing corporate work as well to pay my bills. And once I'd found a crew from my first short film, which was my camera operator and my sound guy, they're like my core crew. They're my two core crew members, obviously, two big crew members that you need. Um, I started getting corporate work, but I don't really want to be doing, some people like videographers go out and they do the whole thing, like they do the camera work and they're sending up the sound. I'm like, oh, no, I can't do that. I can't bother doing that. So I started bringing them along and giving them paid work. So by the time I came to do the feature film, the my DP, who also, if I'm being honest, is somebody I've known for a long time since school. So I said, oh, I'm going to make this feature film. He's like, okay, cool. Am I doing it? I'm like, yeah, of course. If you want, you be the operator on it and the DP. He's like, and he said, you don't have to pay me. I was like, cool, because it's always been his dream to make a movie. I'm like, cool, okay, that's great. And then he wouldn't even take expenses either. So basically, I got a DP for 14 days for absolutely no money. And my sound guy just charged me a lot less than he normally would. So I saved money on that. Then other way, saving money really. Just like I said from my first film, scheduling is a huge thing. So I really knew how to schedule my time now. I spent months breaking down the script, knowing exactly how I could shoot some, as also as a camera operator and as an editor, I could see the movie in my head. So I'm like, well, I don't need to do master shots there. I know I need that, and that's what I want anyway. So because I knew exactly what I needed to do, I cut down the amount of time that I needed for setups and also for the amount of time I needed for shooting. And that's another thing because I work as a cinematographer now, and had already been before I made the feature. I favor, especially in no to micro low budget productions, which is basically what I work on most of the time, a one lighting setup, as in not one light, but I'll set up the scene and basically just I can shoot then. I may have to adjust occasionally some light a little bit, but generally I've got the technique down to now on. We'll put that light there, and that light there. I can get the shots that I want. We won't have to move around. We know the blocking, and once we've done a run through with the actors, you can just bang it out. And again, having the actors that you can trust. I've used the same actors quite a few times now, especially one actor. His name's James Podmore. He's from Liverpool. He's been in everything I've directed so far, my first two short films and my feature film. And I just worked with him last week again I just did a short film in Cardiff last week as a cinematographer, and I got him on that because they were looking for an actor. And you've got your regular crew and also your cast, if you can find them. You all know how you work together. The cast know how I direct. I know what they're capable of in front of the camera, and they know what their characters are meant to do and what I want them to do. It all saves time. It really does. It's proper planning, isn't it? The planning really saves you time on set. I mean, ideally, 20 to 30 days would have been better, and we would have got more shots or coverage, is whatever you want to say. But I got everything I feel I needed for the movie, and yeah, that's basically how I saved money, was good planning, having some cast and crew that only worked for expenses, some cast and crew that only worked for like quite a low amount of money, and some cast and crew that just offered to work for free. And what I've done is I've given them contracts that if we end up selling the movie and it makes any money, then obviously they get a percentage of the film. So it's all, I guess, what you can offer to people. But there's various ways. At the end of the day, I think it's just experience on all those things will bring together to make something a lot easier to shoot in a short amount of time on a lower budget.
Yeah, absolutely. And that planning, for me anyway, when you are on set and you've got the cameras and the crew and the actors, you don't want to be in that situation trying to figure stuff out because it's stressful and you're conscious of the time and you're conscious of so much stuff. So if you've done that thinking at home the night before or the week before with a cup of coffee and you're just it's just you figuring it all out, it will run so much smoother for you. So where are you in the process of the film? Film's shot? Is it edited? Are you sales and distribution? Where are you at the moment?
The film's complete. It's all done. Post-production stuff all done.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds done. Grading, everything's done. So yeah, we are looking for distribution right now.
Yeah. Now, it'd be interesting to see where you end up distribution wise. And the reason I ask about violence was obviously it's a bit of a challenge at the moment because a true horror fan doesn't care necessarily about violence. That it's there, like you say. If you're conditioned, you've watched it. It's kind of part of a horror movie. But then I know there are some platforms who
Yeah.
don't like violence at all. They want everything vanilla. But then you've got your hardcore audience, and that's what they want. So it's kind of find that space for your film where you're reaching those people, but you're also reaching the widest audience possible. So I'll have to come back to you and find out where you ended up distribution wise.
Oh yeah, I mean, I can give you some feedback on distributors because I contacted about 40, I'm going to say about 43 distributors if they're interested. I'm slowly getting responses from them about, sending them screeners. So I've sent 5 screeners out so far, and 2 have come back and said they don't want it, but they don't give you a reason why. I mean, and it's fine. I mean, the movie might just be shit, so that could be the reason why. Well,
That's the
I mean, I
spirit.
don't know. Obviously, I like the movie because I made it, and I'm very happy. See, this movie is the kind of movie that I would watch. I haven't gone out to make a movie that will ascend my career to some massive level because I'm making something very commercial. I like Giallo movies, so I made a Giallo movie, and it's not exactly the most popular subgenre of films nowadays. Now, obviously, there are a lot of fans out there still, especially horror fans, but I can see from a distributor's point of view, oh, how are we going to sell this to the mass public? If this is not really a very popular or kind of known subgenre anymore when its heyday was like 50 years ago.
Yeah. No, I think when you get to that phase, when you've made a film, sending the film out to sales and distribution, you've got to, as much as possible, try not to take rejection personally, because I imagine it's not that the film's rubbish, it's that it doesn't fit, like you say. Some of them specialize in different things, and they look at it. They also have to look at the film in relation to all the other films they have and how it would slot in with that. And they've all got their buyers lined up that they know, and they know those buyers won't like this, they will like that. So it it can be a bit soul destroying, especially after you've spent all that time making a film and then suddenly you're sending screeners out thinking, yeah, here we go. People are going to love it. And it's just non-stop. Not for us, not for us. So yeah, you've got to try not to take that personally. I'm sure your film's awesome. I'm looking forward to seeing it. So tell me about Barber Green Digital. What's that?
So it's a production company I started in 2018. So it's actually a CIC, so it's a not-for-profit. And I set it up originally to try and give, to do work with local charities and local social enterprises and also train people. And I'm still doing that every so often. But I also, my dream being to make narrative films, I thought, well, why can't I combine the two? So with the short films that I've done and the feature film, I've offered obviously people who are interested or thinking about getting into the film industry, especially narrative filmmaking, the opportunity to come along and and learn hands on. Um, that's it. But originally it was set up to make stuff for charities and social enterprises, which we are still doing. But I've taken a break from it at the moment, just as I'm concentrating all my efforts on the Blade Cuts Deeper and just getting that out because I'm hoping that once the Blade Cuts Deeper out, even if it's not a massive movie in the sense that it gets this massive attention, makes lots of money, but it will prove to people that we can do something and we can make a big production because the production looks a lot bigger than it is. Because as I called in a lot of favors as well from people from over the years that I've worked with, the movie realistically I worked out should have cost somewhere between 150 and 200,000 pounds with all the time that's been spent on it. And I only did 12 to 14 days of shooting, but there's a lot of work that's gone into it in post production as well. And I called in a lot of favors for that, and I called in a lot of favors for some of the locations that we use. And also with people working either for free or very low, it brought the budget down a lot. So something that should have cost a lot of money has come down. And I don't think you'll watch it thinking, oh, this movie cost £14,000. But I want to be open with people and say how much the movie cost because in a way I'm proud of how much that movie cost and what we've been able to achieve for £14,000 realistically. But I get back as I was saying, I'm hoping that once the movie comes out, I can then use it to show people like, well, look, this is what we can do, and if you give us the opportunity, if you want, the opportunity to do something else, we can do something bigger for you, whether it's for a charity or a social enterprise or whatever it is. Now, obviously, the charities and social enterprises may not be into the whole horror aspect thing, and I'm not asking them to make a horror movie, but I just want to showcase the kind of talent that's both in front of and behind the camera for them, so they can see what production we can make for them. And that again, a horror movie may have not been the right genre to make for that, but I mean, I wasn't going to go and make a drama or something that I wasn't interested in, because again, maybe I'm only on set for 14 days, but the amount of time you spend in pre-production and post-production on a film is a long time. And if you don't like the movie you're working on, what's the point?
And talking about liking the movie, did you enjoy filming? Did you enjoy that 14-day shoot? Because that sounds like hell to me, trying to fit it all into that. One, did you enjoy it? And two, what do you wish you'd known at the beginning of that week, at the beginning of those 14 days that you know now?
Oh gosh, I did enjoy it. I loved every minute of it because was finally directing a feature film. The last 6 days were the most difficult because we switched to nights. Um, we were very kindly offered to shoot. We needed a place where we could do a bunch of sets in empty spaces, and there's a shopping centre or mall close by to Liverpool in Runcorn, and they close at 6 p.m. at night and they open at 6 a.m. in the morning. So they actually gave us a run of the whole mall from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. For very, very, very cheap. It was really kind of them. And there was a bunch of empty shops in there, so we just used some of the empty shops as different um, uh, uh, rooms for the production company, the fake production company who came up that's inside the movie. But they were long. They were 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and switching to night shoots was difficult for a lot of people. I personally didn't mind it. Whenever I'm directing something, even if it's a short film for 2 or 3 days or the feature film for 14, I'm on a pure adrenaline rush the whole time. So I don't mind lack of sleep. That doesn't bother me. I'm just really happy that I'm directing something. So I had a great time. Things that I wish I knew now that I didn't know. Gosh, honestly, I can't really think of anything. Probably there was 2 days where I didn't have an AD, and that's not to do with the AD that was working on it. That's just the way it worked out. Um, yeah, I should have really. I'd known that was coming up, and I thought I could deal with that, and we did deal with it. But yeah, I think next time I will never be without an AD ever.
Right. Okay. Good advice. Good advice. So I just finished with a fun question. So you love your Giallo film. What is the best Giallo film ever? And give me the pitch for it and tell me why it's the best one.
The best Giallo film ever? Oh gosh, it's probably Profondo Rosso, really. If you think about it, um, it's Dario Argento's kind of epic Giallo. It's a great story, and it's fantastic. The camera work's fantastic. The soundtrack by Goblin is fantastic. It's just everything about that movie. It's extremely surreal for what it is. Like I said before, Dario Argento's movies are quite surreal anyway, but this one, there's just parts in that make no sense. Like there's a bit where some guy is building up the suspense, and he's going to get killed, and then suddenly through the door, just this robotic doll just suddenly comes in and bursts into the room. It's got nothing to do with the story. It's never mentioned again. It's just all these random things kind of happening in the movie, and it makes no sense, but at the same time, it kind of does make sense in the world that Argento creates. So I would say Profondo Rosso is probably the best one I've ever seen. But it's definitely not the best. It's not my favorite Italian movie. One other movie takes that spot, and nothing I think will ever push it out. Oh, that's actually the T-shirt I'm wearing right now, but I've worn it so much that it's faded. Um, I don't know if it's called. It's the British title or the English title for it is Nightmare City. I think it's the greatest Italian film I've ever seen. It's Umberto Lenzi from I think it's 1980 or 81, and some people call it a zombie movie, some people call it a virus movie, some people call it vampire movie. Doesn't matter. It's a mad action adventure movie with people biting people and ripping them apart and gunfights, and it's really violent in the stupid way, and half the dialogue doesn't make any sense, which is what I love about Italian films. It's fantastic.
Hope you enjoyed that episode. If you'd like to hear from more industry professionals, how they got into the business and how you can do the same, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from movie sets around the world, then please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast.